Look, I've lost count now of how many times we've seen the left and most of the media, to the extent that those two things are different, use every crisis they can to bash Australia. Remember just weeks ago they were saying we were racist to send coronavirus evacuees from China to Christmas Island for quarantine. Trouble is, as it turned out, the evacuees themselves were deeply grateful in the end. And when Australia was early out of the blocks to ban travel directly from China, there were two entities quick to criticise. One was the World Health Organization at the UN, which had a swipe saying it was unnecessary and would cause fear and stigma. And more predictably, perhaps, the Chinese communist regime objected to the bans, citing the World Health Organization statements and suggesting Australia was giving in to unfounded fears. On our shores, some people have been eager to talk up racism, even though their only evidence has been isolated, dumb, insensitive and rare episodes of people saying they don't want to be treated by Asian doctors at public hospitals, requests that were quickly and rightly denied, while people making them had some pretty obvious facts explained to them. Still, this was all some commentators needed to declare again that we are infected with racism.
I think we need to acknowledge there's a lot of fear and anxiety going on out there, and it's because there's so much that's unknown, about this virus. We really don't know what's going on. But in the absence of knowing what's going on, it allows the panic and the fear to take over, and it's so easy for that to descend into xenophobia and racism and the yellow peril. It's always close to the surface. So I think we need to be very, very careful that we don't go down that way.
It is built into our country. I'm an Indigenous Australian. Our lands were invaded and stolen, not settled and dispossessed, invaded and stolen. When for most of the 20th century Australia had a policy of excluding non-white people, when we spoke of the yellow peril, as Jason has just talked about, then those issues of race are always there. It is at the core of who we are. Doesn't mean every Australian is a racist, but it is built into the foundations of the country. And I don't think we can just brush those things blithely aside. It does reveal something deeply entrenched in the country.
Yes, forget the virus. For the usual suspects, or at least many of them, it's this nation that's the problem.
The travel ban for China will continue.
And the majority of Australians are on board, 80%, according to one poll. Why? Because it makes us feel safe. The thing is, the World Health Organization disagrees.
There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade.
That's the thing I find most incredible, is that I will admit I do feel safer. Like, the first thing I do is, oh, OK, great, it's been contained. But then intellectually I know, because the World Health Organization has said it, you don't have to do it. We don't need to be doing this.
And there have been plenty of other news angles.
Others want the travel bans scrapped altogether. The Australian Chinese Workers Collective dubbing the policy racist during a rally this afternoon.
A rapid increase in racism against Chinese people.
But thankfully, even some leading commentators from the left could see that Australia has in fact been wise to make its own decisions, rather than wait for the endorsements and recommendations of the UN's World Health Organization.
The explanation that's has currency in the cabinet here is that it's pressure from China, that the World Health Organization has become a captive of Chinese political pressure. I think this government was wise not to wait for the declaration from the WHO, which still hasn't come.
Well, I think they've certainly been ahead of the WHO, and they were from the very outset when the WHO was slow in declaring this a global emergency. So I think it's difficult to fault the government's handling of this.
Yep, guess what? This nation is likely to make the best decisions for our country and its people. Good to see some sensible analysis there. Now to get the left to realise that sovereignty might trump UN posturing on border security and climate change too.